na 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 na
Square
na
round
na.
You know, you need to tune in if you want to hear So we Chad, Josh, Dmitri, and Marcus every Friday.
It's the Square Round Table.
Tune in.
It's the Square Round Table podcast. Tune in every Friday. Let's have a blast. I know at work you had a long day. Just relax and tune in.
Make sure you tune in weekly, every Friday. MajorsOnMusic.com. We also tune on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. So yeah.
Hey, what's going on, my freaks and geeks? Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. This will be our last podcast for 2020. And what a better way to end the year than with our next guest. Tonight's guest has voiced over 300 characters, including Obito Uchiha, Ed Elric, and the legendary Super Saiyan Broly. Please, guys, give it up for Mr. Vic Mignogna.
Well, hello, you guys. It's a pleasure to join. You know what? I didn't even realize this was your last one of the year. I'm honored.
Yes.
I guess you couldn't get anybody else. You couldn't get anybody else, and so you just had to settle for me.
Look, it was more like saving the best for last.
Oh,
Yeah.
You're good, you. You're good.
Gotta go with a bang,
Exactly. But no, Vic, we are we're so thrilled to have you. It was just an example of like a lot of things falling into place at the right time. It's just crazy that we were able to get you last minute, because I know when I hit you up like months ago, you were kind of busy. So when you told me that you were free and ready to do it, I was just like, whoa, okay, this is perfect. This will be our last one for 2020. So let's go.
I'm really glad it worked out, man. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no, thank you. The pleasure is all ours. Definitely. So how's everything been going? Like, I just want to know a little bit about how you've been holding up since this whole crazy 2020 mess has started.
Yeah, you know what? I'm really grateful to live in Texas. I just love Texas. I love Texas. A bunch of common sense people, not too much craziness.
Yeah.
Everything's pretty much open. Restaurants, all the stores, I mean, everything's open. Yeah, there's the mask mandate when you're indoors right now, but it's really I'm really grateful to be here, because there are a lot of places in the country where where the governors and the people in charge are really cracking down hard and making life really, really miserable for a lot of people. And so I'm really grateful. Also, I'm grateful that I have a studio in my home.
Right.
And I've been recording audiobooks. So, while there hasn't been a ton going on outside in studios and stuff like that, it's been a real blessing that right at the time that I needed something to do,
right.
And COVID had shut so much down, several authors contacted me and wanted me to record their audiobooks of novels that they had written. So I've been doing that. I've been having a great time. I already recorded one that's on Audible right now called In Plain Sight by a guy named Dan Willis. And it's doing really, really well online and getting really good reviews, and people are really enjoying it. And I am literally 4 days away from completing the second one. I try to get a chapter done a day. And this current book is called The Crimson Spark by William Hastings, and it's 79 chapters.
Oh my goodness.
And I am on chapter 76. So the goal line is
well,
near.
congratulations on that.
That is a
it's been a heck of a project, but I've loved doing it, and the author is very, very pleased with how it's coming out. I've really enjoyed the story and the characterizations. So overall, I started seeing a young lady that I really like.
Oh wow!
This year. So overall, it's been it could have been a lot worse here.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be too celebratory, because there are a lot of people that have had it really rough over this year, and I feel for them. But I'm very grateful to God that it hasn't been any worse here.
No, definitely. I feel a lot of the same way because we've started this podcast because of the, pandemic and kind of being in quarantine. So, and we've
Right.
talked to a lot of people, and a lot of people have said the same thing, even though it has been sort of a polarizing year in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
A lot of people have found ways to have their little personal goals and do a lot of positive things and find relationships. And it's been, and I can honestly say for me, yeah, it certainly has been personally, I would say, I hate to say it was like a silver lining, but a lot of positive things have happened for me and my guys over this year.
Well, you know what? When any human being gets in a bad spot, they can handle it one of two ways.
Right.
They can either fold up like a cheap suit and fall apart under the pressure and curl up in a little ball and take medication and, you know what I mean, and just give up. Or they can regroup and go, okay, how am I going to make the best of this? How am I going to keep moving forward? How am I going to make the most of a bad situation? And I think 2020 has forced a lot of people into making one of those two decisions this year. So it sounds like you guys made some really good calls, kept moving forward. You started your podcast, and good things are happening. So it's great to hear.
Definitely. And, we appreciate it. And yes, it's a lot of that, making the best of, a bad situation.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what, I wanted to have you on this podcast for, because you have a lot of like positivity, especially like with the way you operate and then with certain roles that you've had. Like I wanted to talk specifically about one that resonated with me a lot.
Okay.
I wanted to know, like, what was the process of working on like Full Metal and Brotherhood, and how does it feel to work on projects that have like such a positive impact on so many people?
Full Metal Alchemist is definitely the favorite thing I've ever done.
Oh, wow.
It's a great show. It's a great show with a great story and great characters, endearing characters. I was just lucky enough to get to play Edward Elric because, it's a great show, and it's not a great show because I'm in it. It's a great show. It was a great show long before I was involved, and I was honored to be a part of it. When I had recorded probably 40 or 50 shows before I ever got to Full Metal, probably more actually, and nothing had ever grabbed me and really hit me the way that Full Metal Alchemist did. I just loved the show and the characters and the relationships so much, and it's kind of like Mark Hamill getting to play Luke Skywalker. You could spend your entire career as an actor and get cast in hundreds of movies and TV shows and never get to play a role like Luke Skywalker. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But Mark Hamill was lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time and got cast in a role that he will be remembered for forever.
Yeah.
True.
And I've kind of likened it, to my being a part of Full Metal Alchemist, or Dragon Ball Z for that matter.
Right.
That I was fortunate to get to play this character. You could spend your entire career as a voice actor and be in 500 or 600 different shows and never get the chance to play a character like Ed. So I'm incredibly grateful to have had the privilege to be a part of it.
Wow, that's definitely awesome. And did you expect for it to have like the impact that it had? Because I mean, it hasn't. I don't know how long it's been since the show was on, like playing new episodes. But I mean, the popularity hasn't gone down at all.
Well, you know what? It's funny you should say that, because something interesting happened right after it was announced that I had been cast as Ed.
Mm-hmm.
As I told you, I had probably done 50 or 60 other anime series by that point.
Mm-hmm.
But something happened when I was announced playing Edward Elric. Something happened that had never happened before. I started getting emails from fans, and this is what they would say. I heard you were cast to play Edward Elric in Full Metal Alchemist. Don't screw it up. I'm not kidding you. I had no idea that there was such a passionate, intense love for Full Metal before there was ever an English dub. I had never experienced that with any other show I'd ever done. No one ever wrote me and said, I hear you're playing Kurtz Weber in Full Metal Panic. You better not screw it up. Nobody even wrote me when I was cast as Broly and said, don't screw up my favorite character. Nobody ever wrote me when I was cast in D an Angel or Princess Nine or Evangelion or on and on the list goes. But when Full Metal happened, people were writing me going, you better not mess up my favorite character. So I went into the recording process from the very beginning, a little, you know,
Right.
a little, I gotta bring my A game here and really give it my best. And I'm so incredibly gratified and humbled, actually, so grateful that over the years, hundreds, thousands of people have expressed how much they enjoyed that show, and I'm so grateful that they did.
Yeah, it was definitely awesome.
Yeah, it is. That's great stuff, Vic. But how did you stumble across the role of Ed? Like, is it because of a company? Maybe it's because of a company that you did another anime with. How does that work?
Yeah, I was living in Houston, Texas, and I was doing a lot of work for ADV Films. Was dubbing anime there. And then I met some people from Funimation in Dallas who dubbed anime as well. In fact, they were affectionately known as, at that point in time, they were known as the house that DBZ built. I mean, like, that was their main title.
Their bread and butter.
They did plenty of other things, but DBZ was their big thing.
Yeah.
And I met some actors and directors at a convention who worked for Funimation, and they said, "Hey, where are you based?" And I'm like, "I'm in Houston." And they said, "Well, we're up in Dallas. Do you want to come and do something with us sometime?" I'm like, "Sure, that'd be great." And they cast me in Yu Yu Hakusho,
Hey.
and then Kitty Grade, and Case Closed, and Dragon Ball, and several others. And then one day, someone contacted me from Funimation, and they said, "We want you to come up and audition for this new show we're doing." So I flew up to Dallas and went into the little waiting area and started looking through the little loose leaf binder that they have for every show they do. When they're having auditions, they'll make these little loose leaf binders. And inside the binder, there'll be a page for each character, like main character. And it will have a picture of the character, and then it will have a paragraph that's describing the character, and then it will have 4 or 5 lines that the character would say. So you look those over, and then you go into the audition with that book, and you go, "Okay, I want to read for Armstrong." And you're looking at you're looking at the face, you're looking at what the character looks like, and then you read that he's got, he's real big and arrogant and loud and got a lot of bravado, and he's a powerful alchemist, and then you see the lines that he says, "Behold my beautiful artistic alchemy." And so that's how you audition for anything.
Oh.
And I went up to Funimation, and I was looking through the binder, and I thought, "Oh, well, this character looks cool, and that character looks cool, and this character looks interesting." I knew nothing about the show. I saw the picture of Ed, I read the description, and I thought, well, I have a kind of a youthful voice. I'll try out for him. And I think I tried out for some other characters as well. But when I went into the studio to actually record the audition, the guy that was directing at the time said to me, "Did you get a chance to look over the characters?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd like to try this one kid here, this Edward kid." And the director kind of smiled, and he said, "I'm really glad to hear that, because I kind of had you in mind for him."
Oh.
And he said, "I'll tell you what we're going to do, Vic. We need to get an English dub of the first episode ready for Otakon in Baltimore." Apparently that year, Larkin Seal, which is a big J-rock band, Larkin Seal, They're the ones that sang "Ready, Steady, Go."
Okay.
One of the original Full Metal.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so they were going to be the musical guest at Otakon that year in Baltimore, and Funimation wanted to have episode 1 dubbed and ready to show at Otakon. So the director said to me, I'm going to have you record this character for the whole first episode. It's not going to be the normal audition. You're not just doing 3 or 4 lines from the piece of paper, from the binder. We want you to record the whole first episode. But I want to be very clear, Vic. This doesn't mean you're cast. It doesn't mean you're going to do the show. We just need to have something ready in 2 weeks.
Wow. That's wow.
So I recorded the first episode, and as you would imagine, from the first episode, I was like, dang, this little kid's like the main character. And so I kind of got excited, but I, tried to hold it in check because I had not been cast yet. And I'll tell you something else interesting that a lot of people don't know. The Japanese companies that lease, or I should say license, anime to be dubbed in another language, usually they don't really care much about the casting process, unless it's a show that they care about.
Oh, gosh.
Unless it's a big deal, like One Piece.
Oh yeah.
Or Bleach,
Okay,
or
yes,
Naruto,
for sure.
or Full Metal Alchemist.
Yeah.
So for Full Metal, Funimation basically gathered the auditions and sent them to Aniplex.
Wow.
And then Aniplex made the final decisions. So the director would pick like his top 3 or 4 favorites for the role, and he would send their auditions to the Japanese who own Full Metal, and they would make the decision.
Wow.
So I was very grateful that the Japanese chose me to play that role. As you may or may not know, Ed was played by a girl in Japanese.
Yeah.
But one thing I found out later was that the Japanese company that owned Full Metal wanted Ed to sound more masculine.
Oh, okay.
Romy Park, who did Ed in Japanese, is amazing. She's amazing. She did the greatest job. I love her to death. I've met her, spent some time. She's awesome. But I think that they wanted it to be a guy in English. And so I was very, very, very grateful to get to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's another thing that you mentioned is that I didn't even think about till just now, because a lot of teenage to younger boys are played by women. So,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Ed and Al, Edward and Alphonse were both played by girls.
Yep.
And in the English dub, the first Full Metal, Edward and Alphonse were both played by guys.
Right. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
And of course, when Brotherhood came along, Aaron
Yeah.
Dismuke, unfortunately, puberty struck, and Aaron didn't sound like a little boy anymore. He was becoming a man, and so they decided, look, we're not going to get ourselves in the same pickle as we did before. We're going to cast a woman who's going to sound the same, and whose voice won't change. That's the good, that's the good way. I mean, that's the positive benefit of casting a woman, because what happens if the show goes on? What happens if it becomes a huge hit and you want to make more? But dang, you cast a little kid to play a little kid, and it was great for a year or so. But now he doesn't sound the same. What do you do? So I think that's why a lot of times women will voice young boys, because they'll always sound the same.
Never thought of it like that.
That just happened with Steven Universe, the guy who did the voice. He hit puberty. They had to age him up in the show to kind of keep him as part of the cast, because people love him so much.
Yeah.
And then they end up like ending the show with like the movie and stuff. So
Yeah.
you definitely see that. That's funny that you said that, because that just recently happened. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, think about The Simpsons, man.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
You know what I mean? If you'd have cast a little smart aleck kid to play Bart Simpson, you might have gotten 1 or 2 seasons out of him, but
Right.
you wouldn't have gotten 20 years.
Right.
No.
Exactly. Because with Nancy, yeah, it's been like about 100 years.
Right.
Bart
She
still sounds the
sounds the same. Exactly.
Exactly the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are all good points you bring up, and I'm glad you did actually, because I just wanted to know a little bit of technical, just a little bit like of a peek into the process. So, like as an actor, I just want to know how important is conserving your voice, and for like specific characters like Broly, Ed, and like Obito, like how did you recover after you played these characters?
Well, Ed wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad because it was close to my actual voice. I mean, my actual speaking voice is a little lower than Ed, and you know, Ed's where I might be here, Ed might be here, and he might have a little bit of a rasp to his voice, you know, give him kind of a scrappy kind of an attitude. But it's not far from my own voice. A character like Broly is very different from my voice, and as everybody knows, if Dragon Ball is known for anything, it's known for screaming and fighting and yelling all the time.
Yeah.
So I've not been really good at taking good care of my voice because I don't know any other way to voice act but just let it rip. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There are a lot of people who are like, oh, you can learn how to yell without hurting your voice. Well, if you figured it out, God bless you. Because I could never, I think you can often tell when somebody's faking a yell. You know what I mean? You can tell, you can often tell when somebody's pretending to be in pain or screaming in anger. You can tell that they're kind of protecting their voice. You can also tell when somebody's ripping their throat out for you. You know what I mean? You can tell when somebody's really screaming. And when I get into any voice acting session, I want it to be the best it can be. Because once they record that scream, it's there forever.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
50 years from now, kids are going to be watching the Broly movie, and the choice that I made at that moment in time with the mic in front of me in the studio will be exactly the same 50 years from now as it was when I did it, you know, years ago. So I go into a session really wanting it to be the best it can be because I know that you're only going to get one shot. And, you know, once you walk out of that studio, whatever you did is done. And so I tend to really throw everything I have at a character like Broly. Or I played several characters in Digimon, but there was a character that showed up for a few episodes named Mad Leomon.
Hey.
And he was a giant lion. And he screamed and yelled and growled even more than Broly did. And it was even lower and more vocally taxing. What I've learned is that your voice is a muscle. Your vocal cord is a muscle just like your biceps are. And you can sprain that muscle just like you can pull a muscle if you overdo it too much at the gym. So what you need to do is you need to hit it and let it rest, and hit it and let it rest. Think about going to the gym. What do? 10, 12 reps, rest.
Right.
10 or 12 reps, rest. You have to let the muscle come back, right?
Yeah.
If you just keep doing it, not only will you tire out, but you could very well pull a muscle.
True.
So, and your voice, vocal cords are muscles, basically. So I learned the hard way that you have to, you know, if I have to yell, by God, I will yell. But I don't want to have to do it any more than necessary.
Right.
So for instance, if Broly has to scream for 5 seconds solid, it doesn't sound like a long time until you're screaming and you're looking at your clock and you're like, holy crap, It's only been 3 seconds.
Or 5 seconds.
Yeah. 5 seconds ends up being a long time. So what you do is you're in the studio and you have them play it for you and you watch it. Can I see it one more time? And they'll play it for you again. And you get ready to do it. So you only hopefully have to do it once. You know what I mean? If you're not paying any attention and you scream 4.5 seconds, guess what? They're going to make you do it again. Because it wasn't long enough. Or like when Ed was doing his short rants, when he was screaming about being short,
Right.
I would watch those short rants and I would look at the script. Who you calling a microscopic being who thinks he can blah, blah, blah. And can I see it again? Will you play it again? And they'll play it again and who you calling a microscopic being? And I'll practice it in my mind. So that if I'm lucky, I can get it right the first time and not have to do it again. and again. So there are people that I know that say they have certain techniques. I don't have any magic techniques. I just drink lots of water, keep lubricated. Don't scream if you don't have to. Allow yourself to recover. But I mean, I'm all for letting it rip, man. You know, I'm all for pulling out all the stops and leaving everything you got on the studio floor, you know?
Well, I mean, obviously, because especially like with the first iteration of Broly, like it was all screams.
Yeah.
So, that's why I'm like, there's gotta be.
You know, I didn't know anything about Dragon Ball. When they asked me to play Broly, I didn't know anything about Dragon Ball. And I got into the studio and I started screaming, doing my thing. And by noon, I was gone.
Wow.
And I was like, how much more is there? And they were like, dang, we still have 200 lines. I'm like,
oh no.
well, I literally went home. I flew back to Houston and sat around my house quiet, drinking tea and being quiet for a week, and then went back up and finished the movie because I wasn't used to that kind of thing.
Yeah.
When we in subsequent like video games and things like that, when we record video games with Broly or whatever, we developed a system where I would record for 10 minutes and then we'd take a 5-minute break. So you scream, yell, scream, fight, power up, go Super Saiyan for 10 minutes, and then you take 5. And you just sit quietly, drink a bottle of water, sit quietly, let those muscles relax again, and then you hit it for another 10 minutes, and then you take a 5-minute break. That was the way we got through all of the 15 video games or something that Broly was in. It's crazy.
Yes, yeah.
And we did the same thing with the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie that came out last year. Justin Cook was directing that, and he was like, listen, if you need a break, let me know. He goes, I want us to get the best. We want the best, and I know you want the best, Vic. So give me some great yells, and then if you need a minute, let me know. And we got it done efficiently, just like we planned, and everything turned out great. Everybody was pleased, but you have to approach those kind of roles a little differently than just a talking role.
Oh, okay. And I know definitely you were thrilled that the newer Broly was just a smidge more tame.
Yes, it was just a little bit more. And I loved the backstory that they gave him, and
For sure.
I really loved the way they developed the character. You really felt for him. You know what I mean? You really, it was almost like Frankenstein's monster.
Right.
Like he doesn't want to hurt anybody. He doesn't even know why he's fighting. His dad has got that stupid thing around his neck and tortures him and has basically conditioned him to be this fighting machine. And man, when he told the story about Ba,
Right.
and wears Ba's ear around his waist, I was crying in the studio. I'm like, this guy, he's just a gentle giant, and his dad has has conditioned him to be this fighting machine, and he's more than that.
Oh yeah.
And then, of course, when you get instigated by Frieza.
Yeah, it was
Freaking Frieza.
Frieza always does something to just mess something up.
The worst. But yeah, Vic, I wanted to know just a little bit more about you, because I know not only are you a voice actor, you do on-screen acting, and you're also a singer. And I wanted to know, like, which career did you pursue first? Was it singing or acting? And how did you break into both of those careers?
Well, here's the thing. Most people that, like, I sing, but I play the piano, and I write music, and I produce music professionally, and I've been doing that since I was like 12. I've been singing in church and musicals at school, and it never occurred to me that it could be a career. You know, there are some things that when you get into college or you grow into adulthood and you're like, all right, what am I going to do for a career?
Right.
And you're like, I'm going to be a plumber. So I'm going to learn the skills of plumbing, and I'm going to get a job as a plumber. Well, no little kid runs around plumbing. You know what I mean? Because it's fun.
Right.
But when you talk about creative things like singing or acting or dancing or creating,
right.
Yeah.
People do that because they have a passion for it. And it's often, more times than not, it's very, very difficult to work professionally in those fields because there's a lot of competition and not a lot of jobs. It never occurred to me that I would be a singing star. It never occurred to me that I would be a professional actor or a star of any sort. When I was in college, I had no illusions about I'm going to go to LA and become a star, you know, or I'm going to go to Broadway and become a star in musicals and on Broadway. I was very realistic. I was like, that's not going to happen. There are people out there a lot better than I am at all of these things. So what could I study and get a degree in, and maybe an area I could work in that I would enjoy, that wouldn't be as, you know, difficult to get into? So I studied film production and video production, and for many years, I worked professionally as a director producer for video productions and television productions and things like that. I learned those skills, and there was an element of creativity to it, but I was still singing and writing music and recording music and writing jingles for ad agencies. And I was still acting. I was in church productions and community theater and any chance I could, because it wasn't about a career in acting. It was just about acting because I loved it. You know, if you love throwing a football, any of you guys love throwing a football around?
Oh, yeah.
There you go, brother. Let's get out, man. Let's get out. I will put a dent in your chest. I can throw a freaking football. But here's my point. If you like throwing a football and somebody goes, hey, man, want to go throw a football? You don't say, well, man, I'm waiting to get into the NFL.
You go through it.
True.
Right. You go do it because you love it.
Right. That makes sense.
It has nothing to do with making a lot of money at it or even having a career in it. I've often done, at a lot of the conventions I've done, I do a Q&A session, right, where I'll have an audience, we'll take questions from the audience. And I've used this example 100 times, and it's a very powerful example. I'll say to the entire audience, could be 1,000 people in the room, and I'll say, how many of you guys like to draw? How many of you guys draw? And like 60% of the hands in the room go up, right? And then I'll say, okay, put your hands down. Of those of you that just raise your hand, how many of you only draw when somebody pays you? No hands go up. Why? Because you don't draw because you're paid. You draw because you have to. You draw because you love it. You draw because there's a passion in you. You want to create something. You sing because you love it. You act because you love it. if you're very, very lucky, or I would say very blessed, and God gives you the opportunity to make a living doing something that you really love, then you are doubly blessed. But I never, when I was young, singing, getting better at singing, learning to play the piano, getting better at writing songs, acting, and hopefully getting better at acting and all those things, there was never a thought in my mind, I'm going to do this professionally someday. No, it was just like, I love doing this, and I would do it whether anybody ever pays me to do it or not. So in answer to your question about, you know, a career in music or a career in acting, I never had any illusion about having a career in those fields. God was just very good to me in opening a door, and I had been preparing to walk through that door my whole life. So when the door opened and somebody said to me, hey, you should go and audition for this place in town here. They buy these Japanese cartoons and they dub them into English and they're looking for actors. In my mind, I'm thinking, I've been acting since I was 12 years old. I've done hundreds of stage plays and music videos and some on-camera stuff. I love to act. I'm going to go and audition. It wasn't I never thought of it as a career move. It was just another chance to do something that I love.
Wow, I like that.
Yeah, it's interesting, but Vic, what do you prefer more over the other? Like voice acting or screen act? Is there one you favor over the other?
They're both they both use very different tools. If you're an on-screen actor or a stage actor, you have an awful lot of things at your disposal that you can use to communicate a character without ever saying a word, right?
Yeah.
Right.
If I'm in a movie and I'm a bad guy, I can communicate my personality the moment I come on screen without ever saying a word, right? The way I walk, the way I carry myself, my facial expression, my costume. There are a lot of different things that an on-camera or stage actor can use to communicate their character, facial expressions, anything without ever speaking. But as a voice actor, none of that makes any difference. It all has to come audibly through your voice. So I wouldn't want to have to pick one because I love them both, and they're both very different skills, you know? It's hard to say. It would be hard to say. It's like, you know, like I played racquetball today, right? I played racquetball at the gym today, and it would be like saying, hey, do you like hitting the red ball or the purple ball better? I don't care. I just like hitting the ball. You know what I mean? I love doing it. I love acting. I love singing. I love music. I love the creative arts, writing, video editing, shooting, photography, and I wouldn't want to have to pick just one over the other.
And that makes sense, and it gives you the opportunity to flex your different muscles, you know.
Yeah, and be creative in different ways.
Yeah, like I know that in the outline you sent me, you mentioned, you know, my Star Trek Continues production.
Right, exactly.
Well, that's not voice acting at all. That's a completely different set of skills, and I loved every minute of that. I tell you one fun thing about voice acting, though.
Mm-hmm.
One fun thing about voice acting is you can get cast to play characters that you will never get cast as on screen.
True.
If you were going to direct a live-action Full Metal Alchemist, do you know who you would cast as Ed? Not me.
Nah, I can't. No.
I'm a grown man, right? I'm not a 14, 15-year-old kid. If you were to make a Broly live-action movie, you know who you would cast? Not me. You know what I mean?
Right.
If you were to make a movie with, you know, little gremlins in it, or elves, or demons, or a homicidal maniac, or whatever, you might look at me and go, "Nah, I don't see it." But voice acting allows us to play all kinds of characters that we would never be cast as on screen.
Yeah.
I definitely like that. And speaking of, I like the fact that you mentioned your Star Trek Continue series, because like I know you're a huge Star Trek fan. Like, and I know it's very much a passion project for you.
That is my childhood love.
That's awesome. So what did it take to put all of that together? Because I know you produced it,
you don't want to
wrote.
It was a monumental undertaking.
Mm.
But I look back on it now and I'm like, how the heck did we do that? Like, how did we pull that off?
It looks great, by the way. I love
Well,
the show.
thank you, man. Thank you. We've got like over 10 million viewers, and we've won dozens of awards, and people have really loved what we've done. But you know, my whole life, I loved that show since I was a little kid, 9 years old. Was when I discovered Star Trek after school one day on television. And I've told people many times, a lot of the things that I do professionally now, I attempted for the first time as a kid because of Star Trek.
Oh.
Like I went to school and auditioned for school plays because I wanted to do what William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy were doing on Star Trek. I wanted to move people the way they moved me emotionally with the stories they told. So Star Trek is responsible for me ever trying acting in the first place.
Oh, wow.
I would watch that show and I would sit there and I would try to make little props. I'd try to get cardboard and glue and paint and tape and little pieces of wood, and I would try aluminum foil, anything I could find, and I would try to make little communicators that you flip open. Or I'd try to make a phaser. Or I'd make one of the little emblems on their chest and glue it to my shirt.
Yeah.
I started trying to build props because of Star Trek. I wanted to make costumes. My mom had a sewing machine. I begged my mom to make me a Star Trek uniform, and she got sick of me begging her, so she taught me how to use her sewing machine.
Mm-hmm.
And I started sewing costumes. And then my parents had an 8mm movie camera, a home movie camera. This was long before video, y'all. Oh, there were no home video cameras. And my parents had a home movie camera, and I would build a model of the Enterprise, and then I would hang it from the ceiling, and I would put black poster board behind it, and I'd put little white dots on the poster board, and then I would run past the ship with the camera and make it look like the ship was flying past me, right? And then I would round the kids in the neighborhood up, and I would make them wear the costumes that I made, and I'd play Captain Kirk, and we'd run around making Star Trek episodes. I was making films and directing people and choosing shots and special effects and model animation, all of that when I was 10, 12, 13, 15 because of Star Trek. Wow. So a lot of the things that I do professionally today, I was inspired to try for the first time because of that show. So now, knowing what you know now, imagine what it meant to me to put on a perfect uniform and walk into a perfect recreation of the sets and play my childhood hero and be part of a Star Trek episode, or in our case, 11 episodes.
Right.
We wrote great stories. We wrote compelling, thought-provoking stories. We brought in all kinds of wonderful people to work both behind the camera and in front of the camera. We built these beautiful sets that look exactly like the original. And the music, the sound design, the storytelling, the lighting, the editing, the costumes, the props, everything is as if the show had never been canceled in the late 60s. And they actually finished the 5-year mission that Captain Kirk talked about at the beginning of every TV show. What I am so incredibly proud of what we did with Star Trek Continues. I can't imagine that I will ever do anything that is much closer to my heart that I'm any more proud of than that show.
That's awesome. And I know I'm not crazy. Is Spock? Is that Todd Havercorn?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like,
See, one of the
oh.
things. Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to do when I started this show is I wanted to bring in people that were my friends
Oh.
that I thought were good actors. So I asked Chuck Huber to play Dr. McCoy.
Right.
And I asked Todd Habercorn to play Spock. And I brought in a bunch of other friends, people that were good at what they did, whether it was makeup, or costume, or camera, or lighting, or props, or set building, or whatever. I brought in all these people, but they were good at what they did, but they were also fans of Star Trek. So we put together a group of wonderful people, and even gave a lot of kids, anime fans, in some cases, the chance to come and work on the show as an intern or a PA and learn about filmmaking, working on our production. We had 5 wonderful years, and we made 11 beautiful episodes that I am incredibly proud of.
That's awesome. And didn't you also do an audiobook about Star Trek?
Thank you. The first audiobook I did was called These Are the Voyages, and it was a book about the making of the original series of Star Trek. It was an in-depth, very comprehensive, kind of behind the curtain look into the making of the show. And it was fascinating. I loved it. I brought in a lot of our Star Trek Continues people to be a part of it, to voice characters in it. And that was the first audiobook I did.
Oh, wow.
And then the second one I mentioned, In Plain Sight, and I'm about to finish the third one, Crimson Spark.
Cool. And one thing that go ahead, Joshua. You're good, man.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Vic, talking about like dedication to a show, because when I was like 14 or 15, me and Chad would always like draw transmutation circles on like pieces of paper and clap our hands together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? I got to tell you something, Josh. It's very humbling to me. There's no better word than that. I am so humbled and honored that I've been able to be a part of some things that have instilled the same kind of excitement as things did for me when I was little. I've had kids come up to me at conventions and say, "You are my Captain Kirk."
Wow.
That's amazing.
And I just I almost fall apart right there.
Wow.
Because I remember being a 13, 14, 15-year-old kid and going to Star Trek convention and meeting those actors as nothing but a fan. And to have somebody say something like that, knowing how much those people meant to me and what they did, the thought that I could ever have anywhere close to that kind of a positive impact on somebody is an indescribable privilege.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's
Definitely.
amazing. Because even watching it, I'm honestly, when I started watching it, I kind of went forward because I thought I clicked the wrong link, and I thought I was watching an actual like Star Trek episode. And I was like, oh, I thought we were supposed to be watching, what Vic did, and I'm like, oh, I was like, that is when I paid attention and took off my fan hat and put on my film cap. I was like, oh, okay, I see it now, because like it was so good. I was like, how have I never seen this?
Oh, dude, thank you for that. Thank you.
It was really good, and as a fellow, film person, I appreciated it a lot because, like you said, we all have those like shows or those movies that we grow up watching, and we just as a fan, you just want to recreate it. You don't want to do it for any kind of recognition or money. Yeah. That's what you love to do, Like with me, when I was growing up, I was big into like Star Wars, comic books. and you know, a little bit of Star Trek, because I was late on Star Trek because my uncle got me onto it, and like Dragon Ball Z and stuff. So my thing was, I used to be in class, and I get a piece of notebook paper, and I would try to do my best, like imitation of like you know, Dragon Ball Z ripoff.
Yeah.
And, like, tell you a story or something. Because I was like, hey, I feel like I could make these episodes like 10 times better.
Yeah.
If I come up with my version of like what Goku would do. You know, and it's crazy because you're like 6 and you're thinking about that, not knowing, you know, once you know, you grow into, you know, your creative mind, it only gets better and it gets, you know, more exciting. And like you said, you're just doing it because you love it. Like for me, I haven't got that one project that I've done yet, but I'm so into everything. Like I'm always writing something here and there. I'm like, okay, let me create this story in this universe, or let me try to see what will happen if this. You can ask the guys right now. I'm always coming to them with a what if story.
Always.
Yeah, always.
Let me tell you something, Marcus. You keep doing that because, you know, that's going to pay off for you, man. I promise you, one day it's going to pay off. And by the way, I love your sweatshirt. And dude, I'm a Star Wars fan too. Don't let anybody tell you. Don't let anybody tell you. Don't ever let anybody pull that Star Trek or Star Wars crap. It's not one or the other. You can like them both. I love Star Wars. I love Star Wars. Dude, I got a lightsaber collection upstairs. I love Star Wars.
Yes, and I tell people, like, you can't be like that about Star Wars and Star Trek, because if we gonna be honest, Star Trek came first. So if it's no Star Trek, it's no Star Wars.
So
I appreciate it.
No, that's right.
True. That's true.
That's right. Preach it. You know it. Hey, you guys, I only had an hour.
Okay.
I hope that's okay.
Oh yeah.
That's fine. That's fine.
But man, I sure enjoyed talking with you guys. Is there anything else you want to ask real quick before we have to wrap up?
Yeah. Go ahead, Josh. You have something?
Yeah, Vic. What would be some advice you would have for somebody trying to pursue a career in voice acting or screen acting and such?
The two things that I would say would be get all the experience you can. Take every opportunity to develop your skills. Every opportunity will sharpen your abilities. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is you have to have a thick skin. You can't give up easily. If you're the kind of person who gets discouraged easily, it ain't for you. Because very, very often it's not the people that are the most talented or the absolute most gifted who get the opportunities. It's the people who just keep knocking and just keep pushing and don't give up and don't take no for an answer. Those are the people that often end up getting the opportunities.
Yeah.
Because you could be like the greatest singer ever, and then you audition for something and you caught the guy on a bad day, or he didn't like your voice for whatever reason, or you sounded too much like somebody else and you didn't get cast. You're like, this is crap. This isn't for me. I'm giving up. You might have been the greatest sensation ever, but you gave up because you got discouraged. You know what I mean? Because it didn't go as quick or as easy as you thought it would. So I always tell people, you know, get as much experience as you can. There are dozens of places that you can get acting experience and opportunities. They don't have to be like big blockbuster movies. Take a video camera out, shoot a story, make up a story and shoot it. Round your friends up, shoot it, edit it on your laptop. Every one of those kind of things. Church productions, community theater, school productions, any place you can get an opportunity to develop your skills, take it. And secondly, don't give up. Don't give up easily. Stick with it. If it's something you really have a passion for, don't give up.
Awesome.
Yeah, awesome words.
That's great advice. So for all of our listeners and viewers out there, definitely you heard it from the man himself. Definitely work on your skills, guys. You know, never give up. and just stay persistent. You know,
Yeah.
you'll get to your goals. It might not happen when you want it to, but it'll happen when it needs to.
Exactly. You know, things will come, like, not everything will happen immediately when you first get your first audition or whatever your thing is. You might have to be persistent. It might take years, but if you keep going, you'll get there eventually.
And if you make sure you're doing it for the right reasons.
Exactly.
That too.
Make sure you're doing it because you have to. You know what I mean? You're doing it because you love it so much and you can't imagine your life without it. A lot of people nowadays find themselves wanting to get involved in some form of entertainment because of the star factor.
True.
They imagine themselves in front of an audience screaming their name. they imagine themselves signing autographs for hundreds of people. Well, that's really great, but that's the wrong reason to do anything.
Yeah.
You do the work first, and maybe some kind of notoriety comes and maybe it doesn't. But when I started voice acting, there was not a hint of a clue, of a prayer, of a chance that any of us were going to be well known, or that the industry was going to grow into what it has now. We just did it because we loved it. So make sure if it's something you really want to do, make sure it's for the right reason.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much.
Hey, all you freaks and geeks out there. We are the Square Round Table. The Square Round Table podcast is brought to you by Science on a Postcard. Science on a Postcard is an online store that specializes in science-themed enamel badges, lanyards, environmentally friendly tote bags, notebooks, and lots more goodies that represent individuality and inclusivity in the scientific community. You could find all these wonderful products on scienceonapostcard.com. And for all our YouTube watchers out there, we will add their website and all their social media platforms in the description.
Now a word
below.
from our sponsors. The Square Roundtable podcast is brought to you by 2 Photon Art. 2 Photon is an art collective whose primary mission is to make science more accessible through science communication and art. Some of their art includes science-themed patches, jewelry, stickers, zines, and clothing, all of which contribute to the inclusivity, equality, and the overall advocacy for human rights in and out of the scientific community. You can find all of these wonderful pieces on 2photonart.com. And for all our YouTube viewers out there, we will add all of their website and social media info in the description below. Definitely. Well, thank you so much for that. And yeah, before you go, we want you to definitely let all our viewers and listeners know where they can find you on social media. What are you working on right now? All of that good stuff.
You can find me on Twitter, for better or worse. and you can check out my fan club, the Resembool Rangers. Resembool is the little town that Ed and Al came from in Palmetto.
Right.
Resembool Rangers online, resemboolrangers.com.
Cool.
You can check out my Star Trek series at StarTrekContinues.com.
Okay.
The studio where we shot our series, we will be having open houses where you can come and walk through the sets and take pictures of yourself on the bridge in the captain's chair or standing on the transporter pads. That is in South Georgia, and you can find out information on when the open houses are at neutralzonestudios.com. Join our Star Trek official Facebook page. I expect to be doing a fair number of event appearances in the coming year. So keep your eyes open. If I happen to show up at one near any of you, please come and say hello.
For sure.
As far as projects are concerned, as I said, I'm always working on some music of some sort, but I'm finishing up an audiobook. Check them out. In Plain Sight by Dan Willis is on Audible right now. The Crimson Spark by William Hastings will be out shortly after the new year. I have 6 different music CDs that are all on iTunes. And I hope to get the chance to see all of you in person sometime soon. Thank you so much for having me, you guys.
Oh,
definitely. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for coming out. And yeah, guys, you'll be able to find all of that information in the description below. And just like every time, guys, it's time for my shameless promotion. So You can catch the Square Roundtable podcast every Friday on MajorZoneMusic.com at 10 a.m. Pacific Time, 12 p.m. Central Time, and 1 p.m. Eastern Time.
And you can catch us on YouTube on Fridays. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And also follow us on Instagram _Roundtable1. And join our Facebook group, on Facebook. We need some group people in there,
Definitely. We like to chat with you guys, and definitely comment below. We want to know all of your comments. What did you think about this podcast and all the podcasts previous? Just check us out, guys. We definitely like to chat it up with you all. So I would like, before we all sign out, for everyone to introduce themselves one more time. And I'm your host, Chad Singleton.
Dmitri.
Josh Singleton.
Marcus.
I'm nobody. I just came because they ordered pizza.
He's the pizza guy.
We called in Domino's, and I just came. Thank you, guys. Hey, listen, you guys are awesome. And to all of your listeners and watchers out there, these guys are great. Tune in and catch them every time they do a podcast. And God bless you guys. Stay safe and healthy in the new year. Let's pray that 2021 is better than 2020.
Yes.
I'm telling you. Yes.
And I will hope to see you guys soon, okay?